Welcome to Sci-Fi Verse. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on new videos, and enjoy the listening. Commander Thrix of the Xeron fleet loomed in the command chamber, his dark, spiny form casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the light around him. The low hum of alien technology pulsed through the floor, resonating with the tension that crackled in the air. His compound eyes flickered, taking in the scene as his officers moved with cold precision. He could feel it, the anticipation, the barely concealed excitement of the hunt. Sub-Commander Thrix's voice reverberated through the chamber, a deep growl that demanded attention. Yes, Commander Wreaks' voice was steady, though he could sense the underlying thrill in her tone. She stepped forward, her many eyes focused intently on the monitors before her. "We have located the target," she reported, her mandibles clicking softly. "Planet Earth, third from its star. The world is teeming with life, but it is the apex predator that interests us. Sensors confirm it's unlike any we've captured before." Thrix's mandibles twitched in satisfaction. "Perfect. This predator will be our crowning achievement." Wreaks hesitated, her eyes flickering with a momentary doubt. "Commander, our scans reveal something unusual. This creature possesses intelligence and adaptive capabilities beyond our expectations. It could be more dangerous than we anticipated." Thrix's gaze sharpened, fixing on Wreaks with cold intensity. "Are you questioning our ability, Wreaks? Do you doubt the Xeron fleet's capability to handle a single predator?" "No," Commander Wreaks quickly responded, her tone submissive yet laced with concern. "I simply advise caution. This creature is different." "Noted," Thrix replied, his voice clipped. He dismissed her concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. "Prepare the containment chambers. We will strike during their night cycle. The humans will never know what we've taken." As the ship descended towards Earth, Thrix felt a sense of pride swell within him. This was their moment. He had led countless hunts across the galaxy, capturing the fiercest creatures from 100 worlds, but this would be their greatest prize. On the bridge, Thrix could feel the tension as they hovered above the dense forests of North America. He watched as his crew made their final preparations, their movements precise and efficient. "Sub-Commander Wreaks, status report," Thrix barked, his tone brooking no hesitation. "All systems are operational," Commander Wreaks responded, her eyes fixed on the target below. "We are ready to commence extraction." "Proceed," Thrix ordered. The massive doors of the ship opened with a silent hiss, and a beam of light shot down, illuminating a small clearing in the forest. Thrix watched intently as the forest, alive with nocturnal sounds, fell eerily silent. There, in the center of the clearing, stood the creature. Shadow, a massive timber wolf with fur as dark as the void of space. His piercing yellow eyes reflected the beam of light, glowing with an intensity that made even Thrix pause. For a moment, Shadow stood still, his ears twitching as he sensed something was wrong. Then, the light intensified and Shadow was lifted off the ground. He barked and snarled, thrashing against the invisible force that held him, but it was futile. Thrix watched with satisfaction as Shadow was brought aboard. "Impressive," he muttered to himself. "The humans will never know what they've lost." Shadow awoke slowly, his senses returning one by one. The first thing he noticed was the sharp, sterile scent filling his nostrils, unlike anything he had encountered before. He opened his eyes and saw he was confined, the bars around him shimmering unnaturally. A low growl escaped his throat. "Where am I?" Beyond the bars, strange creatures moved with unsettling precision. Towering beings with many legs and eyes that glowed like embers in the dim light. They were nothing like the humans he had encountered. One of them, larger and seemingly in charge, approached his cage. The creature's dark, chitinous armor gleamed as its eyes locked onto Shadow. It studied him intently, a mixture of curiosity and calculation in its gaze. "Subject appears conscious," the creature's voice clicked and hissed, making Shadow's ears twitch in discomfort. It studied him like prey, and that made Shadow bristle with anger. "The apex predator of Earth. Smaller than expected, but its intelligence is intriguing." Shadow bared his teeth, his growl deepening. He lunged at the bars, slamming his powerful body against them, but they didn't budge. He was trapped, but he wasn't broken. Not yet. "Interesting," the creature murmured, its mandibles clicking. "Let's see how it fares in the containment chamber." Shadow snarled as his cage began to move. He barked furiously, throwing himself against the bars, but the cage continued its slow journey through the ship. He was taken through corridors that twisted and turned, each more alien than the last, until he was brought into a massive chamber filled with glowing machines. Inside the chamber, Shadow saw projections of landscapes, forests, deserts, tundrous environments designed to test him. The walls hummed with energy, vibrating with a low, sinister frequency. Shadow's instincts screamed at him. This place was wrong. He was released from the cage, and the walls of the chamber closed around him. He began circling, sniffing the air, his muscles tense and ready. Everything was foreign, from the smells to the sounds. It was disorienting, but Shadow was no ordinary beast. He was the apex predator of Earth. He had outwitted human traps, survived countless battles in the wild. He would outthink these creatures as well. On the observation deck, Thrix watched with a mix of fascination and unease. Commence the first test he ordered. The landscape around Shadow shifted, the projections changing to create a dense forest. Artificial sounds of prey echoed through the trees, meant to lure him into a chase. But Shadow remained still, his sharp mind analyzing the situation. These creatures thought they could control him, test him like some mindless beast. He would show them what it meant to face a true predator. For hours, Thrix and wreaks observed as Shadow navigated through their tests. Every obstacle they placed in his path, every predator, every trap, Shadow overcame with speed, intelligence, and sheer willpower. He was faster, more cunning, more relentless than anything they had encountered. "This can't be," wreaks muttered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "It's like this creature has no weaknesses." Thrix clenched his mandibles, his pride wounded. No creature is invincible. Increase the difficulty. Wreaks hesitated, but she obeyed. The tests grew more complex, the environments more hostile. But Shadow adapted. He learned the patterns, anticipated the dangers, and even began to turn the traps against the simulated predators. His frustration and anger grew with each passing moment, fueling his determination to escape. On the observation deck, Thrix's unease deepened. This creature was more than just an apex predator. It was a survivor, a force of nature that couldn't be tamed. "We need to consider termination," wreaks suggested quietly, fear creeping into her voice, "before it becomes a threat to the ship." Thrix hesitated, torn between his pride and the growing realization that they had underestimated their captive. "We've come too far to turn back now," he said, though his confidence was wavering. "But prepare for all contingencies." Shadow moved through the dark corridors of the Xeron ship, his senses on high alert. He could smell the metallic tang of fear in the air, could hear the faint clicks and hisses of the aliens as they scrambled to contain him. But they were too late. He had learned their patterns, understood their weaknesses. These creatures thought they could test him, cage him, but they had made a grave mistake. Now they would face the consequences. His first encounter came quickly. Two On soldiers turned the corner, their eyes widening as they spotted him. They raised their weapons, strange devices that glowed ominously, but Shadow was faster. He leaped at them, his powerful jaws closing around one of the weapons, crushing it effortlessly. The second soldier fired, but Shadow was already moving, dodging the energy bolt with ease. He didn't need to think. His instincts guided him, driving him forward. He was the hunter, and these aliens were his prey. Thrix's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Contain the creature. Do not let it reach the command chamber." But it was too late. Shadow was already closing in, his senses guiding him through the maze of corridors. He could smell the fear, hear the frantic whispers of the aliens as they realized their doom was approaching. In the command chamber, Thrix's hands shook as he gripped his weapon. He had never felt fear like this before. "Open the door," he ordered, his voice trembling. "I will face it myself." Commander wreaks began, but Thrix cut her off. "Do it," he barked. The door slid open, revealing the dimly lit corridor beyond. For a moment there was only silence. Then Shadow appeared, his yellow eyes glowing in the darkness. Thrix felt a cold wave of terror wash over him as the predator slowly approached. Shadow growled, a deep, menacing sound that reverberated through the chamber. Thrix raised his weapon, but his hands were shaking uncontrollably. He had faced countless predators, but this was different. This was no mere animal. Shadow lunged. Thrix barely had time to react before the wolf was upon him, teeth sinking into his armored neck. He let out a strangled hiss, his eyes wide with terror as he struggled to fend off the wolf's attack. But it was no use. Shadow's jaws were like a vise, unrelenting in their grip. With a final, desperate effort, Thrix activated the energy blade embedded in his wrist. The blade hissed as it extended, glowing with deadly blue light. He swung it at Shadow, aiming for the predator's vulnerable underbelly. But Shadow was too fast. He twisted his body, dodging the blade with a fluid motion, and then, with a savage twist of his powerful jaws, tore through Thrix's throat. The Xeron commander collapsed to the floor, his compound eyes staring blankly at the ceiling as life drained from his body. Wreaks, who had been watching in stunned horror, took a step back, her legs trembling. "We need to evacuate," she shouted into the comms. "All units, fall back." But it was too late. Shadow had already turned his attention to the remaining Xerons. They were prey now, and he was the hunter. The corridors of the ship echoed with the sounds of chaos. Shadow moved through the maze with deadly precision, his senses guiding him as he hunted down the last of the Xeron crew. There was no hesitation, no remorse. These aliens had taken him from his home, from his pack, and now they were paying the price. In the command chamber, Wreaks frantically tried to activate the evacuation protocols. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the controls. She could hear the creature getting closer, could feel its presence looming like a shadow over her. This cannot be," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's just an animal." But even as she spoke, she knew it was a lie. This creature was no mere animal. It was something far more terrifying. The door to the chamber hissed open, and Wreaks turned to face the predator. Shadow's yellow eyes locked onto hers, and she felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. She reached for her weapon, but Shadow was faster. He lunged, knocking the weapon from her grasp and pinning her to the floor. His growl deepened, vibrating through her entire body. "No, please," Wreaks' voice was a whimper, but it was drowned out by the sound of Shadow's jaws closing around her throat. Her final scream echoed through the chamber as her body went limp. Shadow stood over the lifeless body, his ears twitching as he listened for any signs of movement. The ship was silent, save for the faint hum of the machinery and the distant crackle of electrical fires. He had won. But his instincts told him there was still danger. He needed to escape, to return to his territory. He sniffed the air, catching the scent of open space, of freedom. He followed it, his body low to the ground as he moved through the corridors. As he neared the hangar bay, the scent grew stronger. His pace quickened, his heart pounding with anticipation. He could feel the pull of the open sky, the need to return to the wild, to his pack. He reached the hangar bay, where the doors were partially open, damaged by the chaos he had unleashed. Beyond them, he could see the vast emptiness of space, the stars twinkling in the distance. And there, cloaked in the shadows, was a small shuttle. The doors were open, and inside he could see the faint glow of controls. "This is it. My way out." Shadow bolted towards the shuttle, his powerful legs propelling him forward. The floor beneath him trembled as the ship's systems began to fail, but he didn't slow down. He leaped into the shuttle, landing gracefully inside. The interior was cramped, but he moved quickly towards the control panel. His paws found the controls, and he triggered the launch sequence. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, and Shadow felt a sudden lurch as the shuttle disengaged from the main ship. He watched as the Xeron ship began to break apart in the distance, its once proud form reduced to a derelict. Shadow settled down in the shuttle, his body tense but ready. The shuttle systems guided it towards Earth, and though he couldn't understand the stars or the vastness of space, he knew he was heading home. He closed his eyes, letting the rhythmic hum of the shuttle lull him into a light sleep. A few days later, back in Millbrook, Mike Rogers couldn't shake the sense of loss. Shadow had been gone for days, and each search had come up empty. He had called for Shadow until his voice was hoarse, but the forest remained silent. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mike spotted movement at the edge of the forest. His heart skipped a beat. There, emerging from the tree line, was Shadow. Shadow Mike's voice broke as he ran towards the wolf. He dropped to his knees, reaching out to touch Shadow's head. "You're alive. You're really alive." Shadow leaned into Mike's touch, a low whine escaping his throat. There was relief in his eyes, but something else lingered there, something that made Mike pause. "What happened to you, boy?" Mike whispered, his hands tracing the scars on Shadow's fur. "Where did you go?" Shadow couldn't answer, but his eyes held a depth of understanding that hadn't been there before. He had been tested, had fought and won, but he was different now. Mike wrapped his arms around Shadow, holding him close. "I thought I'd lost you. I don't know what I would have done." Shadow pressed closer, letting the warmth of Mike's embrace soothe the lingering tension. He was home, and that was all that mattered. The horrors of the past days, the alien ship, the relentless hunt faded away in the comfort of familiar smells and sounds. But as they sat together under the darkening sky, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Shadow's eyes held a new depth, a weight of experience. Whatever had happened to him out there had left a mark. The next morning, the town of Millbrook buzzed with the news of Shadow's return. People were relieved, though curious. How had he survived? Where had he gone? But no one could provide answers. Mike chose not to take Shadow to the vet. He didn't want to subject the wolf to any more stress. Instead, he cleaned Shadow's wounds himself, as he always had. Shadow tolerated it, his trust in Mike unshaken despite everything. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to normal. But there were still moments, quiet, solitary moments, when Mike caught Shadow staring off into the distance, his eyes focused on something only he could see. Mike didn't press the issue. He didn't need to know what Shadow had faced. All that mattered was that Shadow had come back to him, and they were together again. But deep in the forest, something had changed. The animals, the birds, even the wind carried a new sense of caution, a wariness that hadn't been there before. It was as if the earth itself knew that something beyond understanding had happened. And in the night, when the moon was high and the stars glittered in the sky, Shadow would lift his head and howl a long, mournful sound that echoed through the woods, carrying memories of a place far, far away. A place where he had been tested, where he had fought and won. A place where he had proven that Earth's apex predator was not to be trifled with.